Not this time. Fall. She just looks like an engineer, but neither does my granddaughter.
There you go. We good to go, Mr. Lore? All right. Good evening, and I will now call to order the Riverside City Work Session Council meeting for Thursday, September 9th, 2021. If you would please all join me to rise and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Campbell? Here. Mr. Denny?
Here.
Mrs. Franklin?
Here.
Ms. Fry?
Here.
Ms. Lomax?
Yes.
Mr. Maxfield?
Here.
Mayor Williams?
Yes. No absent members. Mr. Lure, any additions or corrections to the agenda as presented?
No.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Denning and a second from Deputy Mayor Lomax to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Agenda is approved. On to the work session items, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Lure.
And I will turn it over to Ms. Bartlett.
Trying to get my mask off, but my earrings aren't cooperating at all. Try the other side first. I did. Okay. So tonight we're here to talk about the Harshman/Woodman wall. And to give a little background, we had Choice One perform a study back in December as to options to extending the life of the wall. And they recommended replacing the wall with a temporary barrier. And the cost of that was just under $1 million. So the suggestion at that time by council was that we need to get the wall inspected. So here we are with the results from Ctl Engineering out of Columbus, who did the detailed visual inspection. You can turn that slide. And Ctl has went section by section along the wall and noted areas of either repair or total section replacement. And I have with me tonight Elnave Bernard with CTL, who did the visual inspection, and she's going to discuss the following slides.
Thank you, Kathy. We could flip to the next slide. As Kathy mentioned, I was on site with another inspector, and we did a visual assessment, and we also did non-destructive testing by concrete sounding on the entire length of the wall on both sides of the wall. This is just a photo to show you the location, and for reference, we started at joint 0 on the south end of the wall. That's what we labeled it, and joint 196. This is just for reference when you go through the report or the section, so that you can have an understanding of where we are on the wall as we go through it. So the next slide, overall, the report findings, the wall is in poor condition. So I just picked out a few photos that we had included in our report to show you some of the areas that kind of repeated itself throughout the length of the wall. On the first photo there, it's labeled photo 2. There's map cracking, delamination in that area, and that's on both sides of the wall, where the delaminated concrete just continues to deteriorate. On the bottom, on the photo 3, we are just showing, again for reference, that the longitudinal cracks are showing up between 4.5 and 3 feet along the length of the wall. This is typical. Concrete will crack, so that's a very typical occurrence. It's not that big of a deal, but when you look to the right on photo 4 and 5, photo 5 shows where, over time, these longitudinal cracks will continue to grow a little bit larger. And as freeze and thaw cycles continue throughout the year, more deterioration will continue to happen. So those are just some pictures to show you. We've got a few more on the next slide. We've got, again, we are just noting that there is actually in between that joint there's a rebar horizontal, and then photo 9, that is at joint 127. You can see that we labeled things with chalk while we were out there to keep reference of where we are at on the wall. So we labeled at joint 127, there's some concrete patching has been done, but more cracking and delamination has occurred. Photo 12 and 13, those areas at the bottom of the wall, again, with, there's different elements in that contributes to the deterioration over time, and definitely the salts of the road in the wintertime. Most of the wall at the bottom, this area specifically was basically had some disintegrated concrete, and we labeled everywhere where we labeled an A is where we found ants in that debris section. And the concrete there is so brittle, you could actually scrape it out with your hand. So the next picture, or the next slide, this shows we went underneath all of the opening areas where the drains were located, and found that besides, obviously there was concrete section loss, but also all of the rebar is exposed and rusted. So that is not in good shape either. And then when we went on to report our findings, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. This is something that we put together. This is a more updated sheet than what you might have in front of you, based on the phases that we had come up with and how we would recommend to do some repair and replacement work. So this sheet, it's showing wall joint 0 to 30. We had up to 7 of these sheets to show the entire length of the wall, so that we could present to the city exactly what they have in front of them. So anything in red that we labeled on the wall is areas that were delaminated or concrete section loss. And also those areas we would be recommending to get replaced. Any of the blue areas that are labeled are areas that are deteriorated, but we are recommending to just do concrete repair patching. So anything that says P1, that would be for phase 1, and we'll get into the cost estimates soon, but that is just for reference. That is what it would look like if we had, if you wanted to see kind of how big of a section are we wanting to replace there. So P1 would be for phase 1, and anything labeled P2 would be for phase 2. So we go to the next slide. This sheet hasn't been updated to represent those findings yet, but I just wanted to give you some visual of what the wall looks like on the different area. This is E5. And if you look at the northbound elevation, the southbound was mirrored so that you could see, both sides of the wall. They're not exactly lined up, but it's just for visual presentation. So by wall 128 and 127, that's where a drain is at. And we'll get into some photographs later, because that section actually started failing after we did this assessment. And we have updated our quantities and estimates to get that entire area replaced as well. So we go to the next slide, and we completed the assessment in April, and we completed the all the findings, I think early, I think July 1st. And July 6th, this photograph was taken. This is at joint 128. That's where we located that to be. So it seems like the wall has shifted. According to the city, no vehicle struck it and there was no evidence of anything striking it. So I know that it was a hot day that day, but this just shows you that, the wall's not in good condition and it's already starting to fail. The next slide shows another picture of this area, and that is where the drain was located at between 127 and 128. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, this is just a different view from the other side. Again, just showing, I'm just wanting to show at least what the city has shared with us. We've not been out on the site again, but we did take note of these photos and including it in our updated report. The next slide shows, again, just that section of the wall. And you can flip over to the next one as well. So we can go to repair costs. So we've broken it down into 3 phases. We are recommending to replace parts of the wall completely and then some concrete patching. For phase 1, the total estimate came out to be $220,000. We had consulted or gotten some numbers from 2 or 3 different contractors to check the numbers that we came up with, and the estimates that I used was from the Odnr database. We also used contingencies that Odnr has recommended recently, a 5% for inflation each year, and then we also added a 20% contingency at the end, which is fairly typical for something preliminary. So this would be for phase 1. It could be done within the, as soon as you could get funds available within the first year. Phase 1 would be recommended to be completed. And when you go over to the next slide, we have phase 2. Again, we have replacement costs here. I forgot to mention on phase 1, we are prioritizing all of the areas that are at the drain locations and any of the sections next to it that or adjacent to it that would need repair. So anything in phase 1, priority there is to get the drain locations done first. For phase 2, it's all of the remaining areas that need replaced. So that would be also concrete replacement. We do have contingencies in there again at 20%, and we do have inflation for 2 years for 5%. So that budget or that estimate does account for some of those items. So that would be $175,000. And then for phase 3, on the next slide, this is only areas for concrete patching, depending on when funds can get available. That can be done, in year 2, preferably, or in year 3. The longer we wait on getting the repairs done, the more deterioration can occur within that time, and those areas can just get larger. So that estimate came in on $130,000. So if you've seen, each one of these has a maintenance of traffic component in it. And we could always go back and run the numbers and look how much you could potentially benefit from trying to do phase 1 and phase 2 within the same time frame, so that you don't have to have that maintenance of traffic costs in there twice. So that there could be some benefit to that. Kathy, I think that's all I have. But I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
Phase 4 down here.
I'll give it over to you, Kathy.
Okay. I'll see if council asks and then I'll prompt some.
Okay.
What's the total of it altogether?
Can I get the price of phase one again?
220.
220,
And
phase,
the maintenance of traffic is running about 50,000 per phase.
If we could combine them both at the same time, we just have one-time cost,
But
Right.
what is the complete total of the whole thing?
525,000.
Not counting maintenance.
That's with
With
maintenance,
tra-
that's
with
with the maintenance of traffic.
595.
And
25.
525.
And that's doing maintenance of traffic 3 times.
Right. You could
And that
potentially,
takes care of-
you could potentially save about 50 grand if you do 2 phases together.
Yeah.
That
Basically,
you can save 100 grand if you did all 3 phases.
All right, Bev, what's your question? And speak on the microphone, please.
525,000, that's for everything.
to do the damaged sections. It's not to replace the wall.
That's what I was wondering what the whole thing was total.
The whole thing, I believe, is about $1 million to replace the whole wall.
$1 million. You got $1 million?
Well, we've got a phase 4 of our Woodman corridor in the works. There was a feasibility study done on Springfield to Airway. And in October, I'm going to have the Montgomery County TID come and talk about what they can do to help us get funding for replacing the entire roadway. And instead of a wall, we'd have a grass median.
Is,
But that's
is-
5 years away.
is Right Pat helping out any at all?
Not on the wall. We haven't asked them to.
Is it part of that going through their land?
But when it comes down to the roadway, that's something that the Montgomery County TID can do, is bring funding sources together and get a lot of different.
So Kathy, if this is really just a temporary fix then essentially, right?
Right.
What you said something about taking it down? Put
It will be
grass-
taken down in the reconstruction project, which is 5 years away.
Well, in phase 3, it's already phased out to be 3 years out, which tells me it has 3 years. You know what I'm saying? And so if we're looking at replacing in 5,
Why don't we just wait?
So can you clarify something for me, Kathy?
Mhm.
The last time we discussed this, we were looking for a temporary solution because there were plans to do the redesign of the roadway. What you just said sounded like that's not definite. We still have to get money for it.
The temporary fix was about $800,000. So it's not, it's still a big chunk of money. The section of roadway needs to be redesigned / relocated slightly because we're getting runoff accidents on both sides, our side and the base side.
Right. My question is, are we for sure definitely going to get that redesign in 5 years? Or are we hoping to get that redesign in 5 years?
In talking with the Montgomery County TID this week, I learned that they think there will be money available to do it in 5 years or less.
They think they'll do that.
Now, my concern with that is that we have done the feasibility study and there is some environmental issues where the roadway is currently going through. So that can delay
Delay it,
slightly a project, depending on the removal limits of environmental soil.
And we feel confident that these 3 phases will get us through 5 years?
Mhm.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Other questions? Did you have other points you wanted to make, Kathy?
I hit on talking with the Montgomery County TID. That's probably the biggest thing. Just to give you an idea of the relocation project, though, if we don't bring the TID on board and we have to fund the whole section of roadway ourselves, we're looking at $400,000 a year for 20 years. And that's with an STP grant. So just so you don't have sticker shock down the road, we're talking some big numbers for this repair and what's going to be after that.
Because wasn't it something that total like 15 million or something?
Yeah.
And that's for total realignment,
Yeah.
replacement and realignment and the grass median, essentially what the end goal would be for the Harshman curve.
Right. Right. And the alignment is not a drastic change.
Right. But still requires an easement inside of a federal installation. I can't imagine that's going to be simple.
Right.
What is the next step then for the city to engage with the TID to, is that ongoing? Is that already occurred? Do you need something from us for the
No,
Transportation
they're
Improvement
going to
District?
come and in October at that work session and share with you what they shared with me about what they can provide. And they have a schedule, which is pretty aggressive to get this started. But that we would be looking at getting a consultant under contract around the first of the year to do the redesign of the roadway.
Does the consultant also act as our advocate with the TID, or is that you? Do we need?
That would be me or the city manager.
Okay,
We'd work with the TID, but the TID already has the contacts. This is what they do. This is not
Right.
new to them.
do we have any, just for my own information, because I've only been an elected official for 20 months, do we have other Transportation Improvement District projects that have been active in the city before?
No, we've never utilized them before.
Okay. Well, thanks for that.
So if we did the total, which is 525, would that have to be borrowed?
I've got 100,000 in my budget this year.
So it'd have to be borrowed. Okay. I just reconfirming.
Other questions for Kathy?
How soon do you need an answer on this?
Well, the wall just bowed in July. We're basically on borrowed time. I'm not sure what our liability would be if it basically went into the roadway. There was enough pressure that it exploded into the roadway and there was somebody injured.
Bev?
Yeah. They're in sections, right?
Mhm.
Is there any way they could just replace the worst? And they maybe separate some of the others to where there's a gap so far in between, but no cars could get through there? And
Well,
just-
that's what we did with phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 1 is the worst, phase 2 is next, and phase 3 is last.
I don't see no gaps.
And phase 1 includes that,
There aren't any
about
gaps there.
the wall that's moved.
Yeah,
Phase 1 includes the wall that's moved.
Yes.
Yes.
there aren't any gaps.
No, they're
No,
just-
no.
Space, like these computers are.
No,
There's space
there's no
here,
gaps.
space there. Can they make it that way, make it cheaper? Use some of the good, spread it out.
You can't leave the wall with gaps.
Why?
The wall has to be continual.
Why no, but you could leave a gap in between, why not? So a car can't get to it.
It would
Yeah. headlights.
It would not have structurally, it would not be sound for when you hit it, because it's the wall all attached that gives its
Okay,
stability.
got it. But how are you going to start this and how much you have to start it with?
Well, it's about 500,000 and that's doing it in phases. So it would be a little less than that, I believe, if we break out the maintenance of
And you only got
traffic.
100,000 to work with.
What?
You got 100,000 to work with?
Yeah, that was a
That's not even
ballpark
enough to cover
estimate at the beginning
section.
of the year, not knowing what we were getting into.
Is that not including any
That's a
of
big
this
gamble.
plan either, is it?
We've already funded this, what you see here.
Okay.
We will need to put together
vote on
more detailed construction plans for a contractor to bid,
Sure.
but we can use a lot of what you see
But
here.
this is already but in your budget.
Mhm. Yeah, the initial budget was about 147,000. So I've used some of the budget to get us to here, and there's still in excess of 100, there might be 130,000 left.
So if we had decided to rip the Band-Aid off, can all three phases be done at one time? Would that be, I know we'll save on the maintenance of traffic, but would it save additional money because we're doing it all at the same time? So you don't have that length of cost of inflation and things like that.
Elney, the mobility of the contractor is also something that, you save money on.
Yeah.
But I would say yes. Do you agree, Elney?
Yes, definitely. Also keep in mind that the smaller quantities, and if you have a smaller job, the costs are going to go up per, foot or per cubic yard. You're also going to have difficulty finding contractors who want to do smaller pieces. So if you have a larger job, they can mobilize once, they can, the cost should go down a little bit in that sense. And then, of course, you won't have the inflation costs. And I put that in there because just for really for your estimate purposes, you don't want to get into a situation where you have a budget of, or, you come up with an estimate and then you don't get the job done in the first year, and, then the costs are suddenly increased. So that's what, all those contingencies are for.
I think it's a good possibility that we could get this bid near the end of the year or at the beginning of next year and know exactly what our cost is going to be.
But potentially, if you did all three phases at one time, you would save almost $100,000 in just maintenance of traffic, correct?
Is that $100,000 from the 525, or is the
Yes.
525 include that?
The 525 currently includes all three phases and maintenance of traffic for each
Okay,
phase.
I'm with you now.
So if you did it
Thank
all
you.
in one phase, you're
There would
saving
be
almost
cost savings.
$100,000.
All right, that's 25. I mean, that's 20% cost savings.
Yeah.
Sarah?
But now,
What would the timeline, could this be done by next spring?
We get a
Spring
contractor.
and summer?
Yeah. I think if we get a big contractor, like when we've done the repairs, Kokosing's came in and done those. So somebody like Kokosing can, do this in no time.
now you said in 5 years, he's going to take it away, change it all. Won't that still have headlights coming at each other?
No, we're going to have a grass median is the plan. A 12-foot grass median between the two sides of the road.
We're keeping it like it is for what, how many years? I didn't start that
It's,
instead.
the
of-
wall out there is 60 years old.
I know, but I mean,
Told you.
instead of putting all that money into it just to tear it down in a few years, wouldn't it be better just to start spreading the wall?
Mhm. That was a question that I asked Ms. Bartlett earlier about, why would we want to spend this money
Right.
up front when we're just going to remove it at the end? And the answer is it may not make it 5 years if we don't invest some money into it now. So
Wow.
it's unfortunate that we need to invest this money now to get us by, but it seems like that's the smart thing to do.
And that was the recommendation from CTL as well, after doing the visual inspection.
And they can't just place the pad and then,
So if worst case scenario, we don't replace it, this breaks between now and 5 years from now. could we get stuck with the cost of having to replace the entire thing essentially without help?
Well, I mean, what if they started?
We would have to
replacing
do
that?
an emergency repair. And my concern is the liability, which I can't answer to. What the city, that would mean to the city.
Well, you said they're going to start in the first of the year.
That's if
If
we
you do it.
get an okay
But
soon.
Couldn't they
from-
start that 12-foot apart thing in the first of the year?
No, that's rebuilding. the whole-
That's
taking it all
rebuilding.
down.
Yeah, that's going to take $15 million. And
And we
that's
got
gonna,
got 100,000.
Sarah, go ahead.
So we have approximately 100,000 in this year's budget. So then that would mean we're affecting next year's budget to accommodate the, what, 400, 350?
Mhm.
525.
And, well, we've got 100 this year, 100 and some change. So that would be in next year's budget, which means what would come out of next year's budget potentially?
We've got some problems with next year's budget when you look at what needs to come out of traditionally gas tax. I don't know if you've looked at your notebooks yet, but we've already promised and,
Right.
applied for grants, and that amount is over $4 million.
Mhm.
And Chris
That's
might
my-
be
Yeah,
able to
sure.
answer a
So-
little more.
Well, that's
There
my
is-
question is, what do we have to do, not do in next year's budget to
Yes, so-
accommodate this 400,000?
So right now, we, in the CIP that you received,
Right?
there was $500,000 put in there for the Harshman Wall. So we have already anticipated this cost for next year. With that being said, we are looking at borrowing $1 to $1.5 million to cover that $4 million that Kathy just referenced. And that will take us near or up to our borrowing capacity based on the revenue that we're bringing in right now. So we're really, in the long term, we need to come up with a solution to address that, reduce that debt, and generate some more revenue for our roadways. But for next year, we're
I
able to
forgot
meet
that
our
there was-
obligations.
There was money set aside
Yes.
for Harshman. So we're probably talking 100, in addition to what was planned for 2022, we're talking maybe 100,000, give or take. If you count this year's money, what was planned for 2022, and then another 100,000 added to the 4 million.
Well, you've got 100,000 now, but you have to hire engineering, or you spend some of that money to do your bid package.
Right.
And I don't know that
It's-
you can,
I've got a little more than 100. I'm already accounting for the engineering.
okay, yeah, I just looked, it looks like about 120,000. Okay, but still, you got to spend some of that money to get your bid packet together. You firm up your extra drawings. Any way you would get the contractor contracted, well, that's going to have to be in the spring, but once we got money.
Okay,
So really, all you can do is the rest of this year is, the more, precise engineering and your bid package and your bid solicitations.
Yeah, I'm not sure about, I have 100,000 this year. If I don't use it, I lose it. Can that be moved into 2022? Because I'm straddling years with the budget.
Certainly, we can write a PO and it's
Can
committed,
we-
or we can,
sorry, can we wait until we hear what TID has to say?
Mhm.
And then, do we have time to wait?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
think, we want to hear. and see
We
what-
want to hear them in October.
You said you have grants coming in the future?
They can speak to that, what they've been able to do in the past and that sort of thing.
Do we have to match it? And then how are we going to do that?
There's a lot of different options. One that I know that we would be eligible for that MVRPC has mentioned to me is, say we had to take on the whole 15 million. They have a program where you borrow through what's called a SIB loan, and they pay either the interest and we pay the principal, or vice versa. I can't remember which.
I'm guessing we'd pay the principal, but it'd be nice of them to pick up the interest.
Yeah.
You said SIB, like
Yes,
SIB or
State-
CIB?
State
CIB?
Infrastructure Bank.
Okay.
Is there potential if this infrastructure plan passes? That there could potentially eventually be some money opened up that way?
That's
I know
going
you
to
don't know
go
the
through,
detail of that,
yeah.
what that looks like, but
that will go through MVRPC, and it's more likely to help a project like this than doing anything for us locally.
right,
Right, right.
right.
Is that considered a safety issue where you can get more money for it?
We tried to get safety dollars back over a year ago now. And our accidents just weren't severe enough to warrant giving us any kind of funding. But the TID may be able to help us generate more interest than we did on our own.
Okay, well, we appreciate this presentation, and I think we all look forward to hearing from the TID in October.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you to our guest.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and back to you, Mr. Lohr.
Next, I have asked Mr. Burkholder to give council an update on community development's work on renewing the TIF districts here in the city.
Good evening to everyone. My report will be very brief. I just want to give you a general overview. As you know, we had a presentation previously from Scott Zients, and Scott was out of the office, and of course I was out of the office partially last week. So we're going to get with Scott Zients, and he's been working on the reinitiating the TID, I mean, not the TID, but the TIF for the Center of Flight, which has expired. We still have monies in that fund, but that would have to be created again for the Center of Flight, which we think is a good policy move, given the fact that we want to look forward to development in that area, and that would give us funding for infrastructure improvements. That's the main purpose for the TIF, is to do public infrastructure improvements. That can also include planning activities as well, which is how we funded our land use plan, with partial funding from the Center of Flight TIF, and then also from the Airway TIF. Now, the Airway TIF has not expired, but we obviously would like to continue that TIF as well. So Mr. Zients is working on those two TIFs. In addition to that, we have some draft language that is not ready to bring to council yet, but hopefully we can bring that draft next week. And that is for another area in the location down at Burkhart and Woodman. And so we'd like to bring that forward as well, including some of the potential calculations based on the improvements in that area of how much that TIF would raise. If you recall, when Scott presented to us, there are various types of TIFs. Some go as long as 30 years. There are rolling TIFs, which the TIF does not kick in until the actual appreciation of the value. So rather than having it on vacant land like the Center of Flight and having that timeline running and there's been no improvement, it actually starts at the time that the capital improvements take place on that property. So we've looked at the various options there. On some of them, we think maybe a rolling TIF that would go 1 to 10 years. And then you also have TIFs that actually include the property tax that's generated for the school district. That could be redirected to the TIF, but there are also other TIFs where that money that would normally go to the schools continues to go to the schools. So we'll have more details on that, but this tool is a good economic development tool, and it gives the city the capital that we will need to make some of the public infrastructure improvements that we've been looking for, not only on the corridors, but in some of the areas like the center of flight that we hope will, be redeveloped within the next 5 years. In addition to that, we've had some inquiries. As you know, we have a TIF on Brantwood now that was used to fund some of the infrastructure in that housing development. And so there have been some inquiries, which I'm not prepared to share tonight, but there have been some requests for some economic incentives in that regard. And so I've done a little bit of research, and we've collected some of the draft documents that other communities have used for their housing TIFs. And so far, we've gotten some documentation, some of those TIF development agreements from Huber Heights. I've also been in touch with the Economic Development Department of the city of Dayton and some of the language and the documents that they're using in that regard, and some of the requests, some of the incentive requests that are being made in those documents. And then recently, I also went to the city or obtained a memorandum of understanding that was presented by a developer in Brookville regarding housing TIFs. So I want to get all those documents together and see what other communities are doing as well. So we really have a variety of TIFs that we're taking a look at. And I hope on some of these that we have actual detailed legislation that we can bring forward. And the law firms that we're working with, they have spreadsheets they can actually take and do estimates on the property values, what you might see in appreciation through development, and then calculate how much of that money would come back to the city.
So when do you think we'd have the next update by way of current TIFs and potential TIFs?
Well, I would hope on some of these that by next week's meeting, we would be bringing some draft legislation to council to consider, maybe not pass at that meeting, but at least take a look at it. And on some of that legislation, there's a requirement that the school district be advised within 14 days prior to that legislation going forward. So I would like to get some of the details and the language to council next week, and then look forward to possibly bringing it to council for a vote in October. And since it would be an ordinance, hopefully the second reading would be at the second meeting in October.
Sarah?
The school district has to approve that. You don't just wave it by them, right?
Only
No. It just depends on the type of TIF it is. So on some of those TIFs, you do not have to get approval from the school board, but you do have to notify.
Yeah, there's a duty to inform, but not necessarily a necessity for approval, depending on the percentage that we want to
That's correct.
TIF.
How
Yeah.
much you're gonna give a break for?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can go up to 75, like, for example, 10-year TIF up to 75% does not require school board approval.
Just school
100.
board, just we just have to inform them.
Notification, yes.
All right, well, excited to hear more about that. So thank you for the update. Any questions for Gary at this time? All right, back to you, Mr. Lord.
Now I'll introduce Mr. Ram Brahm. He is Parks and Rec Commission member for a number of years and newly elected as the chair. Last month at the Parks and Rec Commission meeting, he presented some ideas of his in regard to the Eintracht property. He's presenting his ideas tonight as information for both city council and for staff, so we can consider the feasibility of the ideas there at the Eintracht property.
Thank you for letting me speak, Mr. Mayor and council members and everyone in attendance. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. This is a passion of mine, probably a lifetime dream to create a preserve and the trail system to go along with it for the community to enjoy and to leave a legacy. I want to thank Chris for his cooperation and encouragement in this project. Basically, let me give you a little background on myself. I know some of y'all, but I don't know a lot of you. I worked for Anderson Media the last 25 years, project manager, keeps me pretty busy. I write for basically all the small newspapers in Ohio, also as an outdoors and recreation writer. And also run a small nonprofit called the Great Ohio Outback Regional Authority. And I volunteer for some wilderness charities and wetlands and the Buckeye Trail. I love the outdoors, but my biggest passion, the other thing I do is volunteer for the Park Commission. I just love creating programs and things for the city, try to improve the parks. And this is our Super Bowl. It's football season. And it's a great time of year. It's fall also. That's a great time to hike, great time to enjoy the outdoors. And the great thing is, I've been working with the Beaver Creek Wetlands, which is an incredible organization of multiple preserves. Dave Nolan, who's worked for the Five Rivers, he's retired, but he worked for him for 25 years. He created it, created a lot of stuff for the Metro Parks. And I've learned a lot from him. I ran this by him and he was like, this is a no-brainer. Because he has to purchase the properties. We have the asset. The asset is right there. I just came from there. I hiked it, GPSed it. I've been working on this for 2 years. It's like a jungle in there, but we can tame it. We can, my mantra for my nonprofit is protect, preserve, and promote wilderness areas. Open them up so people can use them, and then they'll protect them more. That asset is there. It's the wood lot. When you go into Untitled, parking lot to the right, which would be a great parking lot for the preserve. The wood lot there would be the preserve, and it's one of the most spectacular views of the Great Miami River. It's on a cliff, and there's actually in the right adjacent to the preserve is 4 of the best views I've seen of the Great Miami. One of them's like over a 50-foot cliff. So it's a beautiful asset that we can retool and rebrand basically for nothing. We get the service department involved. My nonprofit, it's small, so I'll give a grant, or we'll give a grant of $500 to help with the signage. And plus 100 hours of in-kind labor. And I guess the prevailing rate's about $25 an hour, so that's about $2,500. So I'm willing to commit $3,000. And I'll help construct, and I've already been GPSing all the trails, but there'll be a trail system within the preserve. And then to the right of the preserve is a grassy kind of a prairie land. That'll be another trail. And then we can do the whole perimeter of the property if we want, which will go by the cemetery and then toward the river, which is essentially a fishing trail. And we've done some promotions there already in programs. We do every year we do a free fishing weekend. I piggybacked every year. I write a story on the free fishing weekend of the state. So I piggybacked it for our park system. We offer a free fishing weekend there. And plus everywhere else in the state. But essentially, some of the benefits we can utilize from this is, number one, it's going to make the area used. I've been back there quite a few times and seen blankets and different things. The best way to minimize any type of vandalism or whatever is to have a property used and organize a trail system through it, whether it's just dirt or it could be gravel and mulch. But some of the things we could do along with it would be a trail naming contest. We could have, once we have it constructed or finished, basically building the trail and installing the signs. We got the parking lot, we got the asset, the woods and the views. We have photo contests, trail building day, field trips for schools. I'd like to have an advisory board for that once it's established. Once it's established, it's a reserve. We could apply for grants, big grants for improvements. Just by taking a wooded lot that's not being used. And I think it will complement, a lot of people fish there. And I put up some signs to help promote cleaning up their waste and et cetera. I think in the package I gave you, I'm gonna install, I've offered to pay for it and the signage, one of the fishing recycling containers. And then it's an incredible kayaking area. Any kayak groups come there and they eat also at the club. So it just would add a broader element to the whole thing to have hiking and a preserve there. Real nice sign at the entrance. I've been reviewing some different signage. It would probably correlate or coincide with a lot of the state park signs and different signs that I perform. I basically have sketched out 5 phases. The first phase would simply be marking the final trails. I've done many preliminary markings on GPS, on Strava apps and different things. And then in conjunction with that, to get people interested, there is already a trail down there that goes down to the fishing. We could get people interested. I think with the attachment, you see a trail naming contest. We could have that soon just to get people thinking, oh, I don't even know anything that anything's over there, but there's a trail. You know, I'm getting this contest to name it. That'll get them juiced up for when we construct the bigger trails, and we could have contests for that. The second phase would be clear out the trails in conjunction with the service department and volunteers that I have with my nonprofit. And then if we went to a dirt trail, is a trail to me, I'm a hiking advocate and hiking enthusiast, but some trails, you know, if we have the assets, and, you know, whatever people like, we could put gravel down and mulch. But dirt is fine with me. And in the grassy areas, the strategy that Five Rivers uses is to just cut the grass lower than the adjoining grass, which creates a trail. And then the fourth stage would be to install the signage, which is tops it all off, gives it the nice professional look. And then the final stage would be to promote it. So basically, I'm here to ask you folks to review it, hopefully support it and approve it. If anyone has any questions, or let me know. And really would not cost us any outlays of funds, just utilizing the service department.
Yeah, Sarah.
Have you made any contact with ODNR?
No, I haven't. I wanted to speak with you guys before I took any type of step like that.
Because I know the kayak launch, that initial money was a grant
Oh,
from
yes, I know. Oh,
ODNR,
yes,
and we've never finished it.
What, I'm sorry?
We've never finished the launching ramp for the kayaks.
What was the original plan?
Was
I mean,
to-
I will have to say I've been to many kayaking launching areas. I've never seen one that has a cobblestone path to it. So it's spectacular the way it is, but y'all wanted more?
It was gonna be,
Had a dock. you know?
it was gonna be, well, all of that. the
Have a
side-
ramp?
The sidewalk and all the, you know, the walkway down to it and all that was ODNR money.
Mhm.
And fixing up the parking lot, the gravel parking lot, that was all a grant from ODNR.
Right, I
Of course,
knew
we
about
had matching money, but
Right.
I'm not sure that we shouldn't approach them to help with this.
Oh, I created a grant package for the parks a couple of years ago with every grant that's out there.
Right.
So I'm right with you. Just give me the go ahead and I'll start digging up grants for it. I'll write the grant if you let me. But I love this stuff. It's my passion. And I think it gives the city a new asset, a nature preserve. You got 5 parks at a nature preserve. People can come there. We promote it. They can get a hike in, older people, school kids could do field trips there. I love the idea. That's why I'm gonna volunteer to give some of my money and a lot of my time for it. But I'd like for y'all to review it. You got all your parameters that you gotta look at, but I think it's essentially, we don't have to purchase property. The property is there. And like I said, the gentleman I work with at the Beaver Creek Wetlands, he was like, wow, you ever get the property? So I hope you take a good look at it. And
April, you have a question?
Yeah, so have you reached out to Metro Parks?
I'm sorry,
Have you reached out to Metro Parks?
you mean 5 Rivers?
Metro Parks 5 Rivers?
No, I wouldn't do, without permission. I want to come and speak with y'all first. I'll be glad to speak to anybody and everybody, but I
Because,
haven't. And the
because I-
gentleman I spoke to is retired from,
yes, yeah.
he's part of the Beaver Creek Wetlands, but go ahead.
Because I think it was just recently, either Kettering or one of the cities is actually working with Metro Parks to create a Metro Park within the city.
I love it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's Kettering.
Mhm.
But I read an article, and that's just why I asked, because I know you said you were working with someone who retired from there.
Right, go ahead. Well, something that you could dovetail into that is, I'm just constantly writing down ideas. I love this stuff. And y'all know I make all these
Mhm.
posters and things. But that's not a bad idea because the asset there, I visualize the biking path across the river, building a bridge, partnering with 5 Rivers to get all the grants.
Yeah.
And bringing the bike path right through our park. In fact, there's somewhat of a bike path already there that I've explored. So that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Well, because the other thing is too, they have, I think Metro Parks has like a 10 and a 20-year plan out there. And you may see if anywhere they, is there somewhere we can work together? Like if we even just create it as a city park, can we tap in, to the Metro Park system, kind of thing.
Y'all give me permission, I'll go talk to him.
So, because the other thing is too, have you been out to Germantown lately?
Not lately, but I have.
So, because they just put that whole new prairie out there, they extended that 2 miles and
Yeah.
that's all prairie. And I think that was all through grant money, that prairie
I
land.
would love to explore that type of partnership and, they create those prairies by doing a burn. In our little spot, which is a grassy land now, we could, if we connected with them, we could do a controlled burn and create a prairie.
My recollection is that grant came through, that was done, the improvements that were done at the Eintracht were done in coordination with Metro Parks. And
I'm
the
sure.
grant came to us from ODNR to
Well,
Metro Parks.
there's a
Mhm.
So,
historical connection,
And it was
so
a
that's
Mr.
good.
Harvey that I know I worked with. I think he may be
Yeah.
retired now, but that's.
So if it wasn't
That's in
used,
their
what happened to it?
It was used, it
was
just
used.
wasn't finished.
Oh, okay, I
There wasn't
understand.
enough money to
Okay,
finish.
I understand.
Multi-phase, and we only got enough funding to get done what we got done.
Got it.
There were ideas to
sidewalk and all
go
was-
further, and it never, the funding never materialized.
I'm a half full type of guy and what I like to do is take existing assets and retool them and repackage them for almost no money and create something great out of almost nothing. And then once it's created, then the interest and we can get grant money. But I'll go hunt for grant money before just in the concept. If you give me permission.
Chris, who cuts the grass now at Eintracht or who keeps up the grounds?
The service department does a portion of it, and then the Eintracht Society is responsible for a small portion of it, as I believe. Is
They
that
don't
correct?
Well,
They-
'cause-
they
At
only
least
have
for
the
the-
out-
yeah.
The part that they use is what they mow.
Yes,
When they
that's
have their
correct.
outside events.
Yes,
And then
so-
we do the rest.
Yep.
You could-
So one of the things I like the idea of talking to Five Rivers Metro Parks. A conversation I had with Miss Bartlett today is we have lots of experience maintaining our parks, but we don't have
Yeah.
experience maintaining the trail system. So I think before we go down this path, so to speak, we need to get a good idea of what it's gonna, what the
Yes.
burden is
what are
gonna
the
be on the
commitments that
service
would
department
be?
to create it, but also how do we maintain it? Is it possible that we could use volunteers to maintain it? Acknowledging the fact that the service department already has challenges keeping up with the workload. So that's something that we want to explore before we fully dive into it, in addition to looking at some additional funding sources out there.
And can I also ask, pardon me, do you have a ballpark of what the proposed path? I know it's subject to change. Is there a mileage there? Is there a total length?
Well,
I like the Schellebarger
walked it-
path because the
I
Schellebarger
walked
path
it-
tells you exactly.
I walked it out today and it's about, what you see there where the plus sign is where the preserve would be. About a mile. And, you know, it's not going to be a 10-mile area, but it's very tight and twisty and zigzag inside the preserve. And it's so dark and jungle-like in there. If you construct the trails strategically, you can go deep one way and come back, and you can get a good enjoyable hike, and then hit the pinnacle of the Blue Heron Lookout. And then you have other branches to go off to the Cemetery Trail or whatever, but about 1 mile. Now, I would like to mention, since I'm here, if you were by the cemetery and you were doing the perimeter, and you're say you came into the property and you're on the left, which would be the south, there is a opening there that is, and I've already presented it in a poster, but there's a opening there that we could join to for a trail running area on the flood wall. And you know, we could be the first. In my nonprofit, I'm promoting trail running and trying to make Ohio the #1 state. And nobody in the state has a trail designated for trail running. We could designate that as a portal, because we probably don't own the flood wall, but we can, that opening there, which would come off of our perimeter trail, could be the portal to, I've done it, a trail run, it just follows the river, it's incredibly beautiful. So there's a lot of potential there if you get out there and walk it and explore it. So.
Did you have another question, April?
Oh, the only other thing I was going to say, because you were talking about an advisory committee or advisory board kind of thing, you know, after it's done. Have you guys considered, Chris, or whatever, considered like just getting a couple of Parks and Rec people together to,
No, I meant before.
that's what I'm saying, before, get it before, and then
Yes.
those couple people,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah. Committee, advisory committee, that would, the people who are really interested is the people to get on it.
Mhm.
And it's just, it can be as simple to start. It's just cutting the trails out to the lookout and the preserve, putting up some nice signage, and we've got a nature preserve. We can add everything else slowly, slow drip it. So it can be built quick. It can be done. Me and my crew could do it probably by March, just that. And then all the other can be added, the perimeter trails and grants and whatever. I'm offering a $500 grant.
Is most of that honeysuckle or is there?
I am not That's not my forte as far as the type of plants.
Right.
I'm an adventurer and a hiker.
Well,
We-
is it-
we-
is
I
it-
don't
is it-
know.
Is it the stuff that looks
Oh,
about that big around and looks like?
it's a combination of everything. We did our
Right.
tree truckers program. And that was one of the parks, and I actually took a lot of photos in that area. And it named the different trees, so there are different trees, real trees
I-
back there,
no,
but
I-
inside
I'm not-
You're right.
I am in favor of this, but I am also in favor of getting rid of every honeysuckle plant possibly
So-
conceived.
Yeah, that's
Well, and the
fine.
thing is-
Well, we can construct the trail to go right at it.
Yeah.
The Metro Parks deals with it all the time.
To my
It's
point
everywhere.
is, what I'm afraid of is, if we cut out all the honeysuckle, all you're gonna have is grasslands.
Yeah.
No, the honeysuckle.
But I was
It's on
just-
all
I
the,
was
it's on all the
just-
trails.
I was just there 2 hours ago and it's pitch black in there. There's so much density of
Mhm.
vegetation and trees. It's incredible. I
Yeah.
love it. That means you can cut trails any way you want and people don't know which way they're going, but then they can end up at the pinnacle point.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for our guests?
Yeah,
Your
and,
concept then is volunteer labor to mark out the trail and then
Yeah, I
go through
will,
and.
I myself, I've been working on
Also
this for 2 years.
in the
GPS and
seas.
research it. I myself
Yeah.
would like to construct, mark off the trail
Well, we don't
system.
have anything that's.
So I mean, if you,
They-
if
they-
you
they have-
refined your thinking, like if you go cut trees down there, what are you gonna do with them? Throw them off to the side, you gotta haul them
Well,
out, or all that
I would like to map out the trail system, help clear it, but we would need the service department to help.
Well, then you're
So
gonna have
city
to
or- it's just
define
what-
and what, you're gonna have to define what you need them to do.
Right. I
And then we
understand.
have to see if we can squeeze that out.
Yeah,
Here's another,
go ahead.
there are Boy Scouts in the area.
And Girl
Yeah.
Scouts too.
And Girl Scouts, and they all need
Roger.
Eagle Scout and Cadet,
Gold Award.
what?
Gold Award.
Gold Award this would be a good project for some of them to do. If you have it mapped out, that could be they could organize the manpower to get your path cleared.
Love it.
And I know when Eagle Scout and the JCs worked on the Glendine property, we worked with the service department and we cut all the honeysuckle out, which, as you can see, Glendine is trees now, not just honeysuckle. But we shredded it with the chipper shredder, although I don't know what condition. I know they've been just hauling it to Webster Street lately. But you could use that mulch to put down on, at least initially, to put down on your trail.
Awesome. A great
So,
idea. I will- I
but
will-
Boy Scouts, to me, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts would be a good place
Well,
to
and then-
start to get some of your man.
Does that
And then
have-
also for your advisory committee, I think
Right,
they would be
and
good
then I
resources.
just-
Some of them on there. Yes, all these ideas I will put in some type of presentation or an agenda. And then we can just keep filling.
Does
filling
that
it in
have,
and
does
adding.
that have poison ivy or poison oak in it?
Sure
I
does.
guarantee you.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Make sure them Girl Scouts don't get.
Yeah.
They know how to recognize it.
Okay.
Yeah, they get trained.
All
right. Sarah has a contact.
Yes,
Sarah has a contact she wants to share with you.
yes. The director of ODNR at the current time is Mary Cole Mertz. I have written her phone number down here. This is her personal phone number. And she is a honor graduate of Stebbins High School.
My
And-
wife went there. She
Yeah,
may know
and-
her.
Huh?
My
Yeah.
wife may know her.
Well, she graduated in 85. But she is currently director of ODNR. And that is a contact for us to get help from
May I
them.
mention you gave it
You
to me?
definitely may.
Can I get that?
Sure.
That is yours.
Yeah, that's yours to take.
And you can certainly tell her that Sarah Lomach gave you her phone number.
So I want to thank Ron for all of his hard work on this.
Yes,
And I can follow up with him tomorrow and we can kind of plot a path forward for this.
Yep.
I appreciate
Great.
all your input and I am here to help.
And
I'm here
David-
to help make it happen. It's the city of Riverside. It's to be their nature preserve. And I just want to be a steward of it and help create it, and offer it to the community. Thank you.
Sir, she is in the area often because her mother is in 10 Wilmington Place. And so she is over here on a regular basis. So if you offered to meet with her and take her to lunch and show her the property, she's available pretty often in the Dayton area.
This is the contact.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ron.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, nice.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So where are you putting those posters?
The last 3 years, I put them up at the parks. In fact, the ones up in here are the ones I physically do it myself. Then I go out and put them up at the different parks with zip ties and with the approval of the service department.
Thank you for all you do.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And we will move into the next part of our agenda, which is council member comments. And I will start with Mr. Maxfield.
I really don't have any today.
All right.
I
We'll
don't
move
have
on to
anything
April.
either.
Me either.
Well, I'm gonna jump on Mike. It's 10 o'clock Saturday morning. We all need to be over at the park across the street.
Everybody got their invitation, right?
Yeah. Parking lot.
So
Honored 20-year anniversary.
9/11.
Oh,
You should
oh,
have
Saturday, I won't be there.
10 o'clock.
Be there early. The ceremony will start on time. They want to be done by 10:28, which is the time that
Woolfield.
the last North Tower fell. So we're going to be placing wreaths on the memorials and things like that. So
Somebody's taking me to the casino Saturday.
if you're available, please show up.
And thanks to the flags that are across the community. And I hope that we can promote that further because I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about the flags that are donning the intersections and all that. And we'll do some more, but we need people to get personally involved.
And Brenda.
Yes, so we had audio trouble last time. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to repeat my comments from last time because I think it's really important. September is Suicide Prevention Month, and tomorrow is actually Suicide Prevention Day. There are a lot of things that we can do to alleviate the prevalence of suicide in our community. And I have 3 things that I want to share are things that we can do. The first thing is we can allow people to talk about when they're having suicidal thoughts, remove the stigma. That's a big part of the isolation that people feel. And so just being able to talk about it is a big thing. The second thing is locking up your firearms. A lot of times when people have the intention to take their own lives, that moment passes if they don't have the means. So just by keeping your firearms locked up, your teenage children don't have the means and you save a life. And then the third thing is Dayton Children's has a training resource. It's a 1-hour training for, it's called QPR training. And it's available on their website. And it gives you, what to do when you're in a situation where someone that you know or working with is struggling with those types of thoughts. So those are things that we can do. There's an initiative, a statewide initiative to make zero suicide in Ohio. And it's really important, especially with all of the struggling that people have had with the social distancing and the pandemic. It's definitely worth our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. And Mike, did you have anything else to add other than the event on Saturday morning?
It's Saturday morning, and then Saturday afternoon at the, in front of Stebbins High School, from 3 to 5, the JCs will be passing out 3-inch by 5-inch flags to everybody. So don't get upset if the traffic is a little heavier than normal there. We're going to be slowing it down a little bit as we pass out those flags.
All right. Well, thank you to the JCs for that. And at this time, we plan to go into executive session for the reason listed on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion for Mr. Denning and a second for Mr. Maxfield. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Denning.
Yes.
Mr. Maxfield.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Franklin.
Yes.
Ms. Fry.
Yes.
Ms. Lomach.
Yes.
Mayor Wayne.
Yes. We're in executive session at 7:17 PM. Thank you, everyone.